All right, so I haven't really had a great opportunity to talk about the PRO Act. That's the Protect the Right to Organize Act, but it's a super important piece of legislation that has actually been passed through the House. This is a piece of legislation that would be basically one of the most bold pieces of pro-labor, pro-union legislation in decades, maybe even since like the World War II times or the times of FDR with like the Wagner Act in the 30s and stuff like that. And it's even actually surprisingly supported, and I don't know how deeply or how much Joe Biden is willing to fight for it, but supported by Joe Biden and other members of the Democratic establishment. So this is a hugely important bill that would increase the ability for people to organize their workplace. It would crack down on companies who engage in predatory or damaging propaganda campaigns or other efforts to suppress unionizing efforts. So it would be a great bill all in all for the working class in this country. And so because of that, of course, we have conservative freaks like Larry Kudlow, who is one of Trump's main top economic advisors, who advocated against the $15 minimum wage and advocated against stimulus checks. Basically, this guy will oppose anything that helps average people. And so, of course, he's opposing the PRO Act in this Fox News clip here. So I wanted to just watch it, and then we're going to talk about exactly why he's wrong on these issues.
And people a fair shot.
Yeah, well, maybe not so fast. President Biden's pitch for unions is about something that's called the PRO Act, as in Pro-Union Act. By the way, private unions today are only 6% of the private workforce. That's all. Working folks have been voting with their feet away from union dues and rules for quite some time. Now, anti-growth provisions in this PRO Act really have nothing to do with the middle-class economy and everything to do with a union left-wing ideological wish list. Right-to-work laws in 27 states could be erased. This, even though right-to-work states have much stronger economic growth than union states. The card check provision would end secret ballots in union elections. The gig economy would be badly damaged with a very narrow definition of independent contractor. And union harassment of workers would occur if employers are forced to release personal information. Snap union elections would give companies little time to tell their story. Really, what this is about is plain and simple. It's about worker freedom. In a free country, blessed with free speech, why shouldn't our workforce be free to choose on a level playing field whether they want union dues and rules or whether they want complete right to work freedom?
All right, so, one of the first things that stood out to me in that clip was the first thing that he was talking about in saying that, well, for decades now, or for a long time, the United States has had a low union participation rate, but he just glosses over that point as if it's a good thing, as if, oh, we've been getting along just fine the last couple of decades with low union membership in the United States. That's not true. In fact, it's so not true that we can look at the data and it will tell us exactly how shitty that has been for the working class that the United States has such low union participation rates. For example, let me just give you, before we get into these graphs real quick, the comparison that is often made between the United States and some of these like more social democratic countries like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, etc. Right-wingers will say, oh, well, those countries over there, they don't even have a minimum wage, right? So why are we increasing the minimum wage? Don't you want to be more like these other social democracies over there? Yeah, okay. Some of those countries don't have minimum wages. Why? Because they don't need them. Why do they not need the minimum wage? Because they have union strength that is such an outpacing force when compared to ours, that their effective minimum wage that their unions are able to collectively bargain for is so much higher than the minimum wage that it doesn't even need to be implemented. So if we had that same thing in the United States, then that same idea would apply. So basically, union participation, right, in a country has a direct implication on wages, on benefits, etc. Okay? It's verifiable. So for him to just say like, oh, well, we've been getting along just fine. No, we haven't, Larry Kudlow, okay? The top 10% or top 1%, we saw that recent study a couple weeks ago that came out from the RAND Institute that was saying the top 1% or top 10% has stolen upwards of $50 trillion from the working class over the last couple of decades. So that's what those types of policies have led to, okay? We see this in the data here with these graphs. All right, so you see productivity skyrocketing, hourly compensation flatlining, and also union membership around the 1980s time of Ronald Reagan with his policies that he enacted. Union membership takes a dive, and as a result, so hourly compensation stagnates. Again, share of income going to the top 10%, union membership plummeting and the share of income going to the top 10%. So there is a direct correlation here between workers' well-being, their material benefits that they are able to receive from their employers, and the ability to have a union or join a union or union participation rates. Okay, so this is verifiable. So completely inaccurate for him to just say like, oh, we've been getting along just fine. Everybody's been getting along just fine without the unions, and now suddenly they're trying to change this. No, this has been long overdue. The prime of our economic growth in this country was when we had the highest union participation. Okay, so completely wrong there. Then the next thing that caught my attention was the gig economy. He kind of glosses over that point and says, well, a very restrictive definition of who's an independent contractor. The gig economy is taking up a higher and higher percentage of our total workforce as time goes on. It's somewhere ridiculous. It's like almost a third of our economy right now, or our workforce is working in the gig economy. I happen to be one of those. I do DoorDash delivery, and guess what? You don't get good pay, you don't get good benefits or benefits at all. And it's not great, okay? The gig economy is basically just a way for employers to skirt around labor laws, because they classify employees, which I am an employee of DoorDash, they classify you as an independent contractor so that they don't have to give you any benefits or fair pay, and so that you don't have any ability to collectively bargain for a better circumstance. So that's the reality of the gig economy, okay? To say as if like applying an overly restrictive definition is going to be a bad thing for the workers. No. It might be a bad thing for the bottom line of some of these employers, but that's not, sorry, that's not our fault. If you can't afford to pay your workers a fair wage, and if you can't afford to give them benefits, then maybe you're not a legitimate corporation. You're just relying on the exploitation of your workforce. So that was the other thing. And then the last thing that he brings up is freedom. He talks about freedom. What freedom is there because this is the thing that capitalists always get wrong about freedom, okay? They say freedom as in the sense that we have a free market. And their idea of freedom within a capitalist system relies on the implication that we live in a meritocracy, that there is a one-to-one correlation between how much work you put into the system and how much rewards you're going to get out, how much value you're going to get out. That is not the case in the United States. Okay, it's absurd. We don't have a meritocracy in this country. I don't think anybody who looks at the data would think that we actually do have a meritocracy. There are people who are having to work 2 to 3 jobs and are barely making it by. You can work a full-time job in this country and be being paid a starvation wage. Okay, meanwhile, we have billionaires like Jeff Bezos who are making $14 billion in one day last year. Okay, so to pretend as if there's a one-to-one correlation with how much work you're putting in versus how much you're getting out is patently absurd. All right, so on top of that, to then claim that we have some sort of economic freedom under capitalism, what are you talking about? What is the structure of a corporation under a capitalist system? There is no economic democracy. You as a worker simply have to shut up and do what your boss says, right? You as a worker, for example, Amazon, have to shut up and toe the line for whatever Jeff Bezos and the executive board for Amazon wants you to do. Okay, it's all about profits for these companies, and they are set up in a tyrannical structure such that you have no say. You have no participation or way to collectively bargain against what your employers are trying to get you to do, or to advocate for better pay, to advocate for better conditions. You have no ability to do that under the type of system that Larry Kudlow wants. This free market system that produces freedom. It's not freedom. It's a tyrannical system, okay? The structure of a capitalist system, these corporations, is a tyrannical system. And the solution to that is economic democracy. And how do you engage in economic democracy? Well, the first step in doing that is increasing union participation. It's just the first step. So the PRO Act is not some like radical, crazy socialist agenda type thing. It's just getting us back to square one. Okay, so I'm going to read you some of the things that are in this bill. So so-called right to work laws, which basically just say like you can benefit from the things that your union is collectively bargaining for, better pay, better conditions, etc., but you don't have to pay union dues. This would make it so that you got to pay union dues. If you're going to benefit from what the union is able to collectively bargain for, you should be paying union dues. That's what that's saying. It's great. The right to work laws are anti-union laws, plain and simple. Number 2, they say employee interference and influence in union elections will be forbidden. Company-sponsored meetings with mandatory attendance are often used to lobby against a union organizing drive. Such meetings will be made illegal. Additionally, employees will be able to cast a ballot in union organizing elections at a location away from the company property. Often, even a successful union organizing drives fail to result in an agreement on the first contract between labor and management. The PRO Act would remedy that by allowing newly certified unions to seek arbitration and mediation to settle such impasses in negotiation. The law would prevent an employer from using its employees' immigration status against them when determining the terms of their employment. Great. And 5, it would establish monetary penalties for companies and executives that violate workers' rights. Corporate directors and other officers of the company could also be held liable. So all of that is great shit, okay? It's just, again, this is getting us back to square one. This is getting us back to that even playing field that Larry Kudlow was alluding to. We are not on an even playing field right now. It's not an even playing field here in the United States. The businesses, the corporate structures, the executives, the owners have basically all of the power. When you don't have hefty union participation rates, then you don't have that counterbalance. And so this is what that's addressing. It's really just the bare minimum, okay? So it's a great bill, the PRO Act, and because of that, I don't think it has a great chance of passing necessarily. At least definitely not if you're going to keep the filibuster in place. I don't think you'd be able to get 10 Republicans on board with this. But this would be a massively important piece of legislation here. So fully support that, and hope that we get a chance to actually nudge this in the right direction, like legislatively, and try to make an effort to get it through the Senate, especially if we abolish the filibuster first. But yeah, it's just funny to see these rich assholes go on Fox Business and pretend as if they're representing like your average person's need, and portray this as if like, oh, I'm actually just trying to help the workers, right? This is just pro-corporate propaganda, the same type of shit he was doing under Trump when he was lobbying against the stimulus checks, against some of these measures that help people directly. He's just a corporate, oligarch shielding public figure who likes to go out and advocate against workers' rights, advocate against the rights of the working class. So absolute nonsense, of course, as usual, coming out of Larry Kudlow's mouth. The PRO Act would be great. It would be a significant piece of legislation. And we got to support it, and support it in full force.